Before the world changed, before the ships came, there was only the land and those who knew it best. For thousands of years, California was not a single place. It was a world of many nations, each with its own language, its own stories, its own way of living in perfect balance with the earth. The Chumash paddled sleek tommels through the ocean mist, trading shell beads for obsidian blades. Deep in the valleys, the Yokuts gathered beneath ancient oaks, grinding acorns into a fine meal, their songs echoing through the trees. And in the high Sierra, the Miwok tracked deer under the golden light of dusk, their steps silent, their movements one with the forest. This was a world untouched by foreign hands, a world of wisdom, of harmony, of power, and soon it would change forever. California was not a single kingdom nor a vast empire. It was a world of nations, over 100 distinct tribes, each bound to their land as a child is to its mother. Their languages flowed like rivers, over 300 tongues, weaving a web of culture deeper than time itself. In the north, the Yurok and Hooper moved like ghosts, through the redwood forests, where the trees whispered secrets older than memory. On the sunlit coast, the Chumash watched the sea, their hands shaping wooden planks into vessels strong enough to challenge the waves. Further inland, the Pomo wove intricate baskets, each stitch a symbol, a prayer, a history, and in the dry heart of the desert, the Kavia studied the sky, reading the stars like a map, knowing that survival was not about conquering the land, but understanding it. Each tribe was different, yet all carried the same truth. The land was not theirs, they belonged to the land. To outsiders, they were simply tribe. But to those who lived here, they were families, nations, built on knowledge passed down through generations. Their societies were not ruled by kings or warlords, but guided by those who understood the rhythms of life. Elders who carried the stories of the past, healers who knew the secrets of the plants, and chiefs whose wisdom was measured not by power, but by how well they listened. The Chumash, with their ocean-bound spirits, knew the tides like others, knew the seasons. The Yokuts lived by the rivers, crafting nets to pull life from the waters. And in the mountains, the Miwok followed the deer, their movements silent, their arrows swift. To live in California was not simply to survive, it was to belong, and in that belonging, there was strength. The land was not simply a place to live, it was a provider, a teacher, a sacred bond that could never be broken. The people of California knew its every gift, and every secret. They followed the paths of the salmon, as they rushed upstream, watched the oaks drop their bounty in autumn, and understood which roots, which leaves, which flowers carried life and which carried death. For the Yokuts, the acorn was more than food. It was survival, carefully leached of its bitterness, ground into fine meal, then baked into nourishing cakes. Along the coast, the Chumash read the sea like a book, knowing which tides would bring fish, and which would take them away. And deep in the forests, the Pomo crafted baskets so finely woven they could hold water, their hands shaping not just objects, but stories, identity, memory. Here survival was not about taking from the land. It was about knowing when to give back. Trade was not just an exchange of goods, it was the pulse of life itself. Across California, vast trade networks stretched like invisible threads, connecting the coast to the valleys, the mountains to the deserts. The Chumash carved beads from seashells, each one polished to a gleaming white, more valuable than gold in the hands of a trader. The Pomo crafted baskets so fine, so perfect that they were prized across the land. And the people of the Sierra carried obsidian, black as midnight, its edges sharper than any blade, sought after by warriors and hunters alike. Through these exchanges, stories were told, alliances were formed, knowledge was passed down. The land did not divide the people, it united them, and through trade, they shared not just goods, but a way of life, a connection that stretched far beyond the horizon. To the people of this land, the world was alive. Every river had a spirit, every mountain held a secret, every tree carried wisdom older than time itself. The spirits were not distant gods in the sky, they were here in the wind, in the water, in the firelight that flickered against the night. Ceremonies were not mere rituals, they were conversations with the unseen. The Chumash sang to the ocean, asking for safe passage before setting out to sea. The Miwok gathered in sacred round, where elders spoke of ancestors who walked among the stars, and deep in the valleys, the Yokuts carved their stories into stone, ensuring that even when voices faded, the land would remember here. Life and the sacred were one. To walk upon the earth was to walk upon the past, the present and the spirit of all things. For generations the people of this land had lived by the rhythm of the earth, their way of life untouched by the outside world. But across the ocean, forces were moving unseen and unstoppable. The Spanish, the first to arrive, did not come as traitors, nor as travelers seeking knowledge. They came with hunger for land, for power, for something they did not yet understand. At first there was only caution, an uneasy dance between two worlds. Gifts were exchanged, words were spoken through signs and gestures. But beneath it all, the earth itself seemed to whisper a warning. The strangers did not see the land as sacred. To them it was something to be claimed. And so, the first shadows of change crept across California. A storm was coming, and the people, the true keepers of this land, could feel it in their bones. The world that people had known for centuries was unraveling. The Spanish mission spread like a sickness, pulling the tribes into a way of life not their own. Those who resisted were cast in chains. Those who stayed were forced to forget the songs of their ancestors. Disease, an enemy unseen and merciless, swept through villages like wildfire. Smallpox, measles, words that people had never spoken, but names they would never forget. Families were torn apart, traditions silenced, sacred lands stolen, and yet, even as their numbers dwindled, even as their voices were drowned by the weight of foreign rule, the spirit of the land remained. The stories still whispered in the wind. The roots ran deep. This was not an ending. This was survival, a quiet resistance, waiting for the day it would rise again. They tried to erase the people. They tried to bury their stories, silence their songs, break the bond between land and soul. But the spirit of California's First Nations did not vanish, it endured. Forced from their homelands, many tribes now live far from the places where their ancestors walked. The Caviar, the Me, the Chumash, their numbers are fewer, but their voices remain. They gather, they remember, they teach. The languages once whispered now rise again in song. The old ways, once nearly forgotten, return in the hands of those who refuse to let them die. This land was never empty. It was never silent, still remembers. And so do they. Time moves forward, but the past is never truly gone. The First Nations of California have endured war, disease, and forced silence. Yet they remain. Their culture, once pushed to the brink, is rising again. Across the land, traditions are reborn. Languages once thought lost are spoken in classrooms. Songs long forgotten now echo at gatherings, and the knowledge of the earth, of the stars, of the spirit lives on. The descendants of those who walked this land first still walk it today, carrying the strength of their ancestors. This is not a story of extinction. It is a story of survival, of resilience, of a people who refuse to fade into history. The land still remembers them, and so does the world. This is more than history. It is a reminder, a lesson written in the land itself. The indigenous tribes of California were here long before borders, long before conquest, long before time tried to erase them, and still they endure. Their voices are not echoes of the past. They are songs of resilience, of strength, of survival. We must listen, we must remember. Because history is not just something we study. It is something we carry forward. The choices we make today shape the stories told tomorrow. Will we honor the past? Will we protect the cultures that remain? If the story moved you, if it made you think, then be part of the conversation. Like, comment, and share to keep these histories alive. And if you want more untold stories of Native America, subscribe now. The journey is far from over.